Hi, I'm Joe DeLisi, and this is the Joe DeLisi Financial Advisor Podcast. In the news recently has been government shutdowns, and this is something that at this point, I think we go through this every couple of years. Nobody should be surprised. Both sides are, they politicize it. It goes and the government shuts down. Many people don't even really know what that means. Really, if you look at the data, roughly 83 to 85% of the government is open. There are other things, national parks and, some airport jobs and things of that nature that are shut down. Some, the Social Security payments are still going to get paid. So when we hear government shutdown, I worry that my clients get concerned that means the economy is going to shut down and markets are going to collapse and all these things. And honestly, I think less and less we have that, but that fear. But what I want to do is I don't want to focus on the politics of a shutdown. I don't want to focus on even what markets will do during a shutdown, because history, we could go back through this, which we're not going to, but if we did, history would really shine light on the fact that markets don't care. Markets don't care about the government shutdown. People may, but markets don't. But what I really want to talk about today is, government shutdown. I think spending, government spending. I think U.S. debt. And what does that mean? What does government spending and U.S. debt mean to you? Now, this is more a conversation around, I would say, financial planning, retirement planning, tax planning, than it is investment planning. So we're kind of deviating a little bit here, but this is a very serious topic. And so I got a bunch of data here that I want to make sure I get correct, because we really had to source a lot of this stuff. So let's just start with, what is the U.S. debt currently? Currently, the U.S. debt, as of recording of this podcast, so this is this is October of 2025, we are just under $38 trillion. And this is according to the U.S. Treasury. $38 trillion. Now, trillion's a big number. So I want to put this into context. So here's some comparisons for you that I kind of sourced out and wrote down. 1 million seconds is about 11 days. A billion seconds is 31 years. A trillion seconds is 31,000 years. 1 trillion seconds is 31,000 years. So 37 trillion seconds is a little more than 1 million years. We are 37 trillion in debt. Put in time, that's a million years. What about, let's look at the U.S. economy. The entire U.S. GDP as of 2024 is about 28 trillion. So 37 trillion is bigger, far bigger than everything that the United States produces in a single year. I'm not talking about the entire wealth of the country. I'm talking about what we produce as an economy. So the debt is bigger, much bigger than what we even produce. This is a fun one. I started thinking this through. I was like, what if here's where this came from. What if we just taxed everybody, 100% everybody, Elon and Jeff Bezos and everybody, me, you, everybody. Well, here's the reality. We would need 185 Elon Musks to equal $37 trillion. 185. Here's another one. If you spent $1 million every day nonstop, it would take about 100,000 years to spend $37 trillion. Now, our government's done a heck of a job on that, if you look at it. So this is a big, big number. It's bigger than I think most of us can comprehend. Here's another way to break down that number. Because 37 trillion is the entire debt owed, but what do we owe? What do you and I owe? Well, according again to the U.S. Treasury, we owe $325,000 per taxpayer. So in my family, we only have two taxpayers. It's me and my wife. As our kids grow up, they'll be part of that. So we have $325,000 owed per taxpayer currently, and yet the government only takes in $47,000. So they're taking in currently $47,000 against a $325,000 debt per taxpayer, which is incredible. Now, here's what that's made up of. I'm going somewhere with this. The biggest budget items are Medicare, Medicaid. That's about 1.7 trillion. Social Security is about another 1.5 trillion. This is what caught my attention. The interest on the debt, just the interest alone, is the third largest category, and that's about $1 trillion. National defense is actually under that. We spend about $900 billion on national defense. Now, as if this isn't all bad enough, 37 trillion, and we just kind of put it in context in time, in terms of time and output, economic output, how big of a number that is, and spending $1 million every day and how long it would take us to actually spend that money. 4 years from now, barring any kind of radical change in what we're doing, that 37 trillion will be 47 trillion. And 8 years from now, the US Treasury believes we're going to be approaching closer to $60 trillion of debt. So how do we fix it? Can we fix it? And what does it mean for you and me? First of all, when you look at any kind of a debt situation, right? This could be household debt, it could be government debt. You can't solve it simply just by one thing. So if you look at a household, one way to solve a debt problem would be to simply increase spending, or not increase spending, increase income. So you just get a better job, a second job, your spouse gets a job, a second job, you increase the income. But what we know from behavioral studies is just simply increasing income will not pay off a debt because the behavior hasn't changed. Now, if you've been my client for any period of time, you know this. We talk behavior all the time. We actually call that it's something we call lifestyle addiction. We get addicted to a certain lifestyle, and just increasing our income allows us to have more lifestyle addiction. And that's our government. And it doesn't matter Republican or Democrat. This truly is a single party issue. This is like a uni-party issue here. They all have a lifestyle addiction with our money. And just simply growing our way out of it won't solve anything because they'll just spend more. That would be my opinion. They're just going to spend more. It doesn't matter who they are. You could be a Democrat or you could be a Republican. They're all to blame. They all spend more. So we could grow. The other way from a household, if you think about it, is growth is great. We want more income. What about cutting? How about cutting some spending? And, we've tried that, of course, the whole Doge thing. And, anytime a politician suggests cutting debt, usually they get skewered for it. And so it's a very real thing. It needs to happen. But there's not a lot of political will to do that. At least we haven't seen that. And then, of course, the third item is something that only the government can do. We can't do it in our households. It would be to tax. So the government can grow their way out of it, increase the income. They can tax their way out of it, or try to, by taking more money from their constituents, us, or they can cut. And all three things really need to happen. Now, let's talk about if they don't do all three. If we don't start bringing this debt down, what are some of the likelihoods? Well, I do think there are going to be some cuts. In fact, I went and looked this up. I wanted to make sure I had what I thought to be correct is actually true. So this is according to the CBO in 2024. The old age Social Security, essentially, is what we're talking about here. The Social Security fund, we keep hearing about how it's going to go bankrupt. It's not really true. Most of that's on IOUs right now anyway. There's no real fund there with dollars in it. But what Congress is able to do is spend more than they take in. But according to the CBO, in 2033, so 8 years or so, between 2033 and 2034, they will no longer be able to do that. They'll have to revert to what we would call it as a pay-go. And so if they're taking in, say, $1 from Social Security taxation through paychecks, then they can only spend $1. And again, according to the CBO, this isn't me, this is the Congressional Budget Office, if that were to occur in 2033, assuming nothing changes, there will be, they say, about a 23% cut to all scheduled benefit levels of Social Security. What does that mean? That means that whether you anticipate getting $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, you're going to cut that by about 23%. And worse, if you're already spending it, if you're already on Social Security, that's going to get roughly a 20% cut. So this is serious business. We got some real problems here in terms of things like Social Security. So, okay, we have big problems coming down the road. We have debt that is spiraling. And the number is approaching 60 trillion in 8 years. You and I can't do anything about this on our own, but we do have to start looking at it in terms of a planning opportunity, right? So if you're my client. And so what would that look like? Well, the big, beautiful bill that passed earlier this year I'm putting this in air quotes if you're listening on the radio or on your podcast player, it made the tax cuts of 2017 permanent. Again, air quotes, permanent. I would submit to you that Congress looks very differently at words than we do. I say permanent, I mean forever. unchanging and forever. Congress says permanent, and they mean until they make it not permanent. So it's always temporary. And so if you look at where we are with the debt, if you look at how politically unwilling or unbeneficial to a politician in office a 20 some odd percent on Social Security cuts across the board would be, then, they're really going to look at tax increases. That's my guess. Now, I don't know the future. I can't predict the future, but what I do know is this. If I was your planner and we are only putting money in places that are deferring taxes down the road or taking big, huge deductions now to essentially pay the taxes later, this could be real estate depreciation. Could be certain business plays that you're doing if you own a business. This could be things like traditional 401ks and traditional IRAs. These are all kind of kick the can down the road type things. There's really no tax-free anything unless you pay first. Okay, so what I would submit is that when we're building your plan for an eventual exit, for an eventual retirement, what we really have to pay attention to is the fact that this debt ain't going away. I don't care what the politicians say. Nobody's done a darn thing about it, and I just don't see the political will to do anything about it. We better set your plan up such that if taxes go up, that you're going to be okay. If taxes stay the same, you're going to be okay. Look, I guess taxes could go down. I wouldn't bet on it, but if they did, you're still going to be okay. That's a very proactive way to look at it. And there are a lot of things that we can do. We can look at things like Roth 401k, pay your tax now and don't pay tax later under the current tax law. You can look at certain, maybe insurance products. You can look at, ways to pay capital gains instead of ordinary income. There's a lot of different things that we can look at, but we have to start being way more strategic because, look, the news today is the government shutdown, but I'm telling you, the news tomorrow is going to be the debt is so high and the interest on the debt is so high that we're going to have to start having serious cuts across the board. And if taxes have to go up to make that stop, my bet is politicians will do that. And if all we've done is delay your tax down the road, you could be in a world of hurt in retirement. Let's not let that happen. If you're not sure if we've done that work together, call me. If we don't work together and you have no idea what I'm talking about, call me because we need to take a look at that.
Registered representative and financial advisor of Park Avenue Securities, LLC, OSI 52280 Carroll Canyon Road, Suite 300, San Diego, CA 92121 619 Securities, products and advisory services offered through past member FINRA SIPC, financial representative of the Guardian Life Insurance Company of America, Guardian, New York, PAs is a wholly owned subsidiary of Guardian. Westpac Wealth Partners, LLC is not an affiliate or subsidiary of Past or Guardian. Insurance products offered through Westpac Wealth Partners and Insurance Services, LLC, the DBA of Westpac Wealth Partners, LLC. CA Insurance License Number OD34103. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not to be construed as tax, legal, or investment advice. Although the information has been gathered from sources believed to be reliable, please note that individual situations can vary. Therefore, the information should be relied upon only when coordinated with individual professional advice. Guardian and subsidiaries, agents, and employees do not provide tax, legal, or accounting advice. Guardian and subsidiaries do not issue or advise with regard to mortgages, property and casualty insurance, and/or car insurance. Consult your tax, legal, or accounting professional regarding your individual situation. All investments and investment strategies contain risk and may lose value. Diversification does not guarantee profit or protect against market loss. Equities may decline in value due to both real and perceived general market, economic, and industry conditions. Investing in securities of smaller companies tends to be more volatile and less liquid than securities of larger companies. Investing in the bond market is subject to certain risks, including market, interest rate, issuer credit, and inflation risk. This material is intended for general use. Part providing this content to Park Avenue Securities, LLC, and your financial representative are not undertaking to provide an advice to make a recommendation for a specific individual or situation or to otherwise act in the fiduciary capacity. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Indices are unmanaged and one cannot directly into an interest.